In fact, we even had a caller call in and ask, well, look, Nutramix reducing the price of flour, is it to help out the government? No, National Flour Mills also reduced it. So maybe it's an industry-wide thing. I think ironically, though, the last that I saw, but this was maybe a month ago, prices of bread and products that use wheat in the States and Canada, I don't necessarily think went down. But again, that's a little bit behind current timing. So prices of flour went down. And the Prime Minister has asked the question, well, if prices of flour went down, how is it that bakery owners can't reduce the price of bread? That the price of doubles can't go down? Because when the price went up, that was the justification for the price of the finished good going up. So flour goes up, finished good goes up. Flour goes down, finished good stays up. And I can't fault the Prime Minister for asking the question. And at the very least, he is asking it publicly. He is the Prime Minister. He is giving the question a certain amount of national precedence, putting it on the platform of the office of the Prime Minister. The reason why the question, I can't fault him for asking it, is that I have heard this question from multiple people over multiple food items, not just in the current situation, not just with the current price increase and food inflation, but even before, even during COVID and even before that. This is a common question. This is a common concern. Why is it that in TNT, for the most part, now I do think certain things like sweet peppers, okay, they kind of came down a little bit, etc., etc. Tomatoes spiked up, I think, and that came back down. But why is it that generally, outside of some, and one might argue that it could be local supply shortages, you get some price hikes and then it comes back down, right? But with regards to the wider food industry, like in general, why does it seem as though prices don't really ever come down, even when the conditions that force them up, so let's just say that they were forced up, right? Let's make that assumption. If they were forced up, why is it that when those conditions are reduced or removed, it can't come back down? Because businesses do say that they're trying to help their consumers, they feel for their consumers. And to be fair, because there's a bakery owner that is quoted in one of the articles. To be fair to them, we don't know what the other conditions are. If there were other changes, we assume that everything else remained constant. We don't necessarily know the why, the ins and outs, right? Supermarkets and grocers, their financial, like the big supermarkets in the UK and Canada and Australia, I think. We're talking the chief financial officers and CEOs have been grilled by their respective parliaments and joint select committees. And the problem is the supermarkets are saying, look, our margins are very, very, very small. And we have not passed out all of the price increases to the consumer. And yet, society is watching their profits increase. And in some cases, it could legitimately just be because volume has increased or certain other factors have changed to help their profits increase. But it's still a concern because on the face of it, it looks as though, well, if profits have increased, you could do more to absorb the costs for the consumer. But then if margins are that thin, to what extent is it really practical? And it could be the same situation for this bakery where the factors have changed, but it's not so simple to bring prices down. Some sort of explanation might help, but then now for an individual business, then you go into the details of how your business is operated, and that might cause issues within your industry, within your competitive market, where your competitors might get insight into what you're doing. Each business has their own advantages and disadvantages, so it's not so simple. But on the flip side, to some extent, the question does need to be asked, and we do need to find what the answer is. It's just, how to go about it. At least that's how I see it. On the other hand, with regards to the wider society, I think we're stuck on the question of, how do we even start? Where do we start? Why do we have to start? Is this even an issue? But the Prime Minister asked the question. And even if you don't like the Prime Minister, it's a fair question to ask. Because we can't just expect the government to do everything. It's impossible. It's inefficient. We complain that they're inefficient. So they can't figure out a way to jerry-rig the economy to deal with cost of living going up because of outside factors causing food inflation. It behooves all of us to ask these questions. And again, don't tolerate potential predatory behavior. Have higher expectations in our society for the quality of service and the quality of products. And don't just accept things. What are we going to fight for? Last story. And this goes back to something I touched on yesterday. The dangers of over-penetration of 5.56 or 7.62, or if we just happen to get modern Russian rifles, 5.46, I believe is the caliber. Regardless, rifle caliber military weapons, the kind you see in battlefields, right? That's the caliber of bullet that seems to be now the preferred gun of choice, and it has now caused collateral murders. And it seems as though it's no longer just, family members or friends within the vicinity. Now it's just people. So there were several shootings within the last 24 to 48 hours. And basically now we've reached the point where we're just saying, gang violence has collateral damage to the cost of human lives. A lot of the violence is, at least some of the violence is linked to reprisal killing in a gang war. One of the, I believe, one situation, it was acquaintances of the target. But I don't understand to what point now are we going to just not speak out about this? Are we going to wait until we just become the random victims of a shooting in Port of Spain? Are we going to wait until one of our family members? Because to some extent, here's the key. It seems as though we're willing to accept a lot of risk, as in we individually, all of us, one by one, accept a lot of risk. That's fine, right? One would think. But we need to realize when it comes to societal problems, it's not just about you and what you're willing to accept. What are you willing to accept on behalf of your family? And even on behalf of your friends? It's one thing that you think that you're tough, but do you have people that depend on you? Do you have people that you care about? So I just found it was rather unfortunate that we've reached the stage where we're going to use the term collateral damage. We're going to use the word collateral. It's almost as though, because collateral damage, from what I understand in military terms, it's kind of unavoidable. Violent action takes place and unintended consequences follow collateral damage. It almost makes it impersonal, the violence. But this is not a war zone, technically. And these are quite personal killings and deaths. So I don't know if this is the new stage of us being numb to murders. We've reached a new high point or low point, depending on your perspective, with regards to how we view the urgency of murders in this country, the sheer horror, disgrace, sorrow of murders in this country. Can't deal with it, so you know, it is what it is. And I kind of don't understand. And what frustrates me the most, one of my pet peeves, is when there's a problem and everybody could identify the problem, say it's a problem, can't necessarily figure out all the details of the problem or solutions to the problem. But part of the issue is, part of the larger problem is that, yeah, we all know what the problem is, but we just don't seem to really have the will to go deep enough, to put in the work, to have enough details, to have the hard discussions, to make whatever reasonable sacrifices that are necessary to actually get a solution. And I've seen this in smaller micro situations, organizations, etc. I've seen this. It's a pet peeve of mine, because if we all want things to get better, what's stopping us? Only ourselves? That's more or less it once you reach to that point. We are stopping ourselves. Think about it. There's nobody else really there to stop us. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, get into the issue with regards to the exemptions to the Procurement Act, which was started off with the summit for CARICOM and some of the procurement orders that have come into question in the national sphere. So stay tuned to Talking Point on WESN. We'll be right back.
The best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, feeding accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex Pools, Amazon Fire tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at 7 Main Road, MacBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, heart disease claims a life every 34 seconds.
Our relative sitting down across the table is experiencing a heart attack as we speak.
It is important to seek medical attention urgently, because prompt treatment of a heart attack could prevent extensive damage and death. Therefore, one should try to get to an hospital as soon as possible, preferably by ambulance.
What's Up Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And one of the latest issues is questions with regards to some of the purchasing being done at the 50th anniversary of CARICOM, where we actually welcomed quite a lot of distinguished VIPs. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's CARICOM, so of course, it's not just for us. The Secretary of State, the head of foreign head of state, all of the congressmen, the UN Secretary General, they didn't just come just for little Trinidad and Tobago. They came for CARICOM, but we were the hosts, which meant that to some extent we had to either foot the bill or figure out the logistics to some extent on our end. And this caused an issue because of the timing of how everything went down and the fact that we have a procurement legislation on the books, which is controversial in its own right already, just off the bat with how it was or how it is implemented, and questions with regards to its effectiveness and how it is being utilized. And this is just the latest one of those questions, but it has now pushed the conversation in a specific direction, and it has led now to the Minister of Finance even going so far as to seek amendments because of the scenario that the government found itself in. The Minister of Finance is saying we need to make changes to treat with this. So for more on what that scenario is, it's time to cue this.
So you have to put the tenders out for 1 month, then go through an evaluation process. Let's say you fast track that, and you do all of that in 1 week. So in a 1 month, 1 week, you then have to allow something called a standstill period, which is in the law as well. And the law says that the minimum standstill period must be 10 working days. So that is another 2 weeks. So that with the best will in the world and the most efficient procurement system and the most qualified and competent and committed people within a ministry or department on statutory authority and so on, it's going to take you virtually 2 months to award a contract from the time you start. That's the law. That's the law as it stands. So there are exceptions to this. There are, prior to the publication of the 2 orders that I will talk about, there were exceptions for legal services, medical services, and so on, financing for the national budget. Let's fast forward now to the recently concluded 50th anniversary of the establishment of CARICOM, the Treaty of Chagaramas, and the visit of the various heads of government, heads of state, the President of Rwanda, the United Nations Secretary General, the United States Secretary of State, a congressional delegation. All of that happened during the period July 3rd to about July 6th. So when these confirmations started to come in, the requirements for the procurement of goods and services became known, because prior to that, there's no confirmation. So you don't know how many congressmen are coming. You don't know how many aides are coming with them. You don't know when the Secretary of State is coming or whether he is coming. And you don't know how many security personnel is bringing with him and what his requirements are. You don't know when. So you have to put the tenders out for 1 month, then go through an evaluation process. Let's say you fast track that, and you do all of that in 1 week. So in a 1 month, 1 week, you then have to allow something called a standstill period, which is in the law as well. And the law says that the minimum standstill period must be 10 working days. So that is another 2 weeks. So that with the best will in the world and the most efficient procurement system and the most qualified and competent and committed people within a ministry or department on statutory authority and so on, it's going to take you virtually 2 months to award a contract from the time you start. That's the law. That's the law as it stands. So there are exceptions to this. Prior to the publication of the 2 orders that I will talk about, there were exceptions for legal services, medical services, and so on, financing for the national budget. Let's fast forward now to the recently concluded 50th anniversary of the establishment of CARICOM, the Treaty of Chagaramas, and the visit of the various heads of government, heads of state, the President of Rwanda, the United Nations Secretary General, the United States Secretary of State, a congressional delegation. All of that happened during the period July 3rd to about July 6th. So when these confirmations started to come in, the requirements for the procurement of goods and services became known, because prior to that, there's no confirmation. So you don't know how many congressmen are coming. You don't know how many aides are coming with them. You don't know when the Secretary of State is coming or whether he is coming. And you don't know how many security personnel is bringing with him and what his requirements are. You don't know when the UN Secretary General is coming and who is bringing with him until it's confirmed and so on. President Obama, the same thing. So that when these requirements became known 1 or 2 weeks before the meetings, the 50th anniversary and so on, obviously you fall outside the 2-month requirement within the Procurement Act. And again, one had to make a decision, the government had to make a decision. Again, as I said, I'm the instrument, but these are government decisions. The government had to make a decision. If you comply with the requirements of the Act without an exemption, then you would not be able to host the 50th anniversary. You would not be able to host the US Secretary of State, United Nations Secretary General, the President of Rwanda, and so on. Because by the time you go through the 2-month process, the event is over. As I said, these confirmations started to come in towards the end of June, and the thing is in July. So again, based on a request to the Ministry of Finance, and I want to make it clear, the Ministry of Finance has not procured anything with respect to the matters relating to the exemption order for the judiciary or for the matters relating to the 50th anniversary of CARICOM and visits by all of these foreign dignitaries and so on. We in finance have not procured anything. The Minister of Finance is simply the instrument to carry out the government's intentions. So again, based on a request, and we certainly would not want to damage our international reputation. We certainly would not want to damage our relationships with our greatest ally, the United States, or with the president of Rwanda and so on, or the United Nations. You don't want to damage it. So you don't want to tell them, look, we have to cancel, we have to abort, we can't have the 50th anniversary celebration anymore because we have issues with respect to procuring hotel accommodation, vehicles, meals, audiovisual services, all the various services that will be associated with a visit by a head of state, head of government, and a foreign dignitary.
Now, that was the Minister of Finance giving his explanation. And on the surface, it might seem as though, well, couldn't you have put some things in place, a generalized purchasing plan or not necessarily have to do everything at the last minute? Because in everyday life or in your business or organization, you might do that. You might put things in place so that when you get the final details, you just have to modify your plans, right? But you could start with having your plans. The problem with things like government purchasing, and even to some extent big corporations, depending on your level of authority in the corporation, but in a government, I don't think anybody really would have any sort of authority to circumvent this at that scale, is that your accounting has to be precise. You get what you ask for. You can't get more than what you ask for. You can't modify what you ask for, because the whole point of putting protections in place to prevent corruption, well, those things tend to prevent you being able to modify things on the fly, because modifying things on the fly is an avenue to embezzle, is an avenue to, skim a little bit from the top, bloat out a contract at the last minute, add a few things here and there that might not be necessary that you think you could get away with, and then take it. So with that said, you could see why, okay, the government has to wait so that it knows exactly what it needs to do, because it can't start and then change. It will still have to go through a similar exemption process, and it might even make the situation more complicated because you have part of the order on one end and now you're trying to finish off the rest of the order. It might make things disjointed and overly complicated. Now, so I'm willing to accept the minister's explanation, but it's not so simple. The long and short is, first of all, I believe that part of the opposition's argument is why I didn't go before Parliament. And the minister's counter to that is saying, well, we weren't looking to make an amendment, as a knee-jerk reaction to a situation. Amendments to legislation needs to be well thought out, and you go to Parliament to make amendments, right? Not necessarily to try to get things done, expedite purchasing, etc., when you have a clear obstacle, when the legislation can't account, the Procurement Act can't account for this circumstance. You don't want to just pass an amendment just for this one narrow circumstance. That's not necessarily the best way to do it. So the minister, he wants two amendments. One is to allow government to act in unforeseen circumstances, which I would hope that when something is actually presented to Parliament, it would be more detailed than that. Because to be fair to any critic that might want to question what does that mean, well, exactly. It's very open-ended. It could mean a lot of things. And if it's just presented like that, there's a lot of room for Lord knows what in that circumstance. However, to be fair to the minister as well, this is not, I assume, the final product. He's just saying what the amendment is. This is a simple way to say it so we could understand what the point of what he wants to ask for, what the government wants to ask for. It's just a communication thing. It's efficient. It's short and to the point. Fine. Right? All of the complex details has to be worked out when it's presented to Parliament as an actual amendment for consideration. The second thing is to have a minimum threshold similar to what accounting officers have to allow for the purchase of immediate items such as toilet paper and photocopying machines. Now, I believe those examples are, that's the accounting officer's example. I don't think he's saying the government needs to have a minimum threshold so that a minister could buy toilet paper for the government. So what exactly is he meaning? What exactly would the minimum threshold be used for? That also needs explanation. Again, when it's presented, I believe that these two things, unforeseen circumstances and minimum threshold, they're both conceptually thought about. They're just concepts that they have in mind. This is what we would be looking for. This is what we need to change. But we do need to know exactly what the details are, as I said, when it goes into Parliament for consideration. Now, former president of the Joint Consultative Council, Afro Raymond, he said that with regards at least to the emergency exemptions, the legislation already allows for it. Because that's the other thing. The opposition is saying, well, those exemptions for CARICOM were illegal. They haven't necessarily examined other situations of examples. The minister did in his press conference give another example before, where for the sake of the judiciary doing a jury trial and the need for secrecy of purchasing for whatever services and goods needed to sequester the jury, they had to figure things out because the legislation didn't necessarily speak to that. So there were other exemptions for judiciary, as he mentioned in the clip. The opposition hasn't necessarily said anything on that. We might hear from them tomorrow on that. But after may say, well, we're allowed for emergency exemptions, which would make the CARICOM Summit emergency exemptions legal. However, it's subject to a strict timetable for reporting the contract spending and outcomes to the Office of the Procurement Legislator. So all of that now, we have to see where that goes. And it is of the opinion of Afro Raymond that the law is not impractical, and I mean, it's a necessary step to protect the interests of society. So the exemptions now, the reason why the exemptions will be potentially controversial is those could be chinks in the armor of the Procurement Act. And it's not something to be taken lightly. Again, going back to the minister's words, that's why you don't just, go willy-nilly with exemptions and try to rush things through to try to use exemptions when you need to get things done expeditiously. Because then the exemptions that you amend into the legislation might be done rushed, might be done with some holes in it, some unintended consequences if it's not careful. And Afro Raymond actually said it straight out. The exemptions used for CARICOM were not illegal. Strictly speaking, the minister's actions conform to law. He is quoted of saying that. So it's an interesting issue because procurement legislation is something that I believe if you're not concerned about it, then you're underestimating what it is, the importance of it. And this touches on a lot of things with regards to corruption in the country. And we need each instance of it, each example of it, each precedent set with it, right? To build it up, not potentially to pull it down. But it has to work. If it's impractical, then it would be discarded, and then we'll be back to square one. So it's a catch-22. More on this topic tomorrow when we'll speak to the opposition on this very topic. But until then, we have to take a break. When we come back, I want to switch gears on a topic that might concern a lot of parents out there, might concern a lot of people in society in general. Take an example from one of our foreign friends. Stay tuned to Talking Point on WSN. We'll be right back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We the police officers, we are professional and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
In the village of Vadgaon in southern India, a new sound marks the daily rhythm of its inhabitants. Every evening at 7 p.m., this siren signals the start of an unusual new curfew. Right after, this group of villagers goes door to door, checking if all the households in Vadgaon are sticking to a mandatory 90-minute digital detox. Residents are asked to turn off all screens and children advised to study.
So, are you studying?
Under the watchful eye of Vijay Mohite, the founder of the scheme.
Initially, people didn't want to leave their phones and weren't ready to turn off their TVs. Many thought, if I turn off the TV, what am I going to do for an hour and a half? But we managed to convince people that if they want their children to do well in school, the dream of every parent, they have to make sacrifices.
The pandemic led to an explosion in screen time across India. Millions of children and young adults were forced to take online courses. As a result, many found the devices too compelling to put down again. The consequences: lack of concentration, a sedentary lifestyle and social isolation. Manisha Mohite, mother of two, found it too much to bear. Now she can't imagine her life without these 90 minutes offline.
I personally gave a mobile phone to the children for their studies, but I didn't know if they used it for that or for playing games. We can't watch them all the time because we have to work on the farm or cook. Now that they no longer have a cell phone and the television is off, we can take care of ourselves. We know that they're studying.
The first day was difficult, but now it's become a habit to study for an hour and a half.
Impressed by these results, nearly 12 neighbouring villages plan to do the same. But elsewhere in India, mobile phone use is booming. Glued to ears and always in hand, there are some 750 million smartphones in India.
Actually, I'm addicted to social media, and when we get time, we scroll through reels. Yesterday, I spent almost 8 hours on my phone.
Whenever I have free time and I don't know what to do, I play on my phone. Without a phone, I would be too bored.
Whether playing online games, posting on social networks or ordering deliveries, the minutes add up. In 2022, Indians spent an average of nearly 5 hours a day on their mobiles, while French users spent less than half that time. According to a study published in December by an Indian media, more than 40% of parents say their children are addicted to screens. 22-year-old Deepak Patel is recovering from his addiction. His screen time went from 8 to around 2 hours a day.
I don't use Facebook, Instagram, and any other social media account anymore.
Every afternoon, it's the same routine. He puts his phone aside to focus on his studies. A victory after 8 dark years.
It's been a daily struggle to reduce my screen time. My addiction caused me a lot of problems. It affected my physical and mental health. My eyesight was getting weaker and my sleep cycle was disrupted. My social relationships were also affected. And I lost a lot of time in my studies because I couldn't concentrate anymore.
Deepak Patel could not have done it alone. For the past 2 years, he's been seeing a psychotherapist twice a month.
Hello, doctor.
So the last time you told me that you had deleted all your social networks, including WhatsApp.
Yes, it was hard, but thanks to that, I'm much more focused.
Since 2019, Ishanya Raj has treated 350 patients like Deepak. In India, hundreds of doctors have specialized in fighting screen addiction.
When we consume an addictive substance, the reward area of the brain secretes pleasure hormones, which gives us a feeling of happiness. It's a chemical reaction that's seen in both drug and smartphone addiction. Whether we like it or not, to experience this feeling again, we'll continue to consume substances or our smartphone.
Screen addiction. How bad is it really? What is the full extent? Is it as bad as what we saw in this video? Because to some extent, I find that to be very extreme. But with that said, I have to admit, I have observed the behavior, at least to some degree. A group of family or friends are gathering and we're all in one room. And one would think it should be an atmosphere of, you know, lively discussion and enjoying each other's company. Everybody on their own device. Everybody has either a tablet or a phone in their hand. And it was incredible. We gathered to be on our devices together. It was very social. Not that we were chatting over our devices. No, we were just watching our own thing. Now, growing up, you know, it was always a fight for the TV remote and what we're watching. And of course, now that everybody could watch whatever they want to watch, there's some degree of peace in a household. You don't need to have a TV for everybody. You just need a device and an internet connection, which is a lot more practical. But the thing is, I myself have to question myself. I use a screen for everything, work, entertainment, everything. Which makes me wonder if I can detox if I have any sort of addiction, if this is affecting my mentality and my development. We all need to worry about these things. It's not just when you're in school, you know, you still have responsibilities and you should still keep trying to progress in life. And to what extent now is screen addiction and instant gratification of, well, your entertainment is at your fingertips and the dopamine rush or the chemical pleasure centers of your brain being hit all the time on demand. To what extent is that weakening your resolve and distracting you from the important aspects of life? Of course, it does not help that I work in the media, so it's actually somewhat important for me to have access to a screen. But how bad is it for everybody else? And this is one of those things. Sometimes issues causes parents to be alarmed. Sometimes too much, overly so. And we have to consider the fact that it's not just access to entertainment. And I'm not simply talking about the fact that you could do research on the internet. But also, you never know what might interest you. The internet is not just about a tool to find out information you need for a project or to watch funny videos on YouTube. Sometimes it allows you to discover new topics, new issues, new information on things that you might not have even thought would have interested you. And it expands your horizons. And I believe for a small nation like ours, our Twin Island Republic, access to the internet has done so much to just expose our young people to more concepts, to more ideas, to get the juices flowing, the discussions flowing. There's more to development than just academics. Granted, academics are important, but on the other hand, social skills are also important. And being stuck behind a screen, not learning how to interact with people, and that's not something that you could just read about. You have to gather that experience. And the mobile device addiction, the screen addiction, for the most part, doesn't help. It's not automatically a bad thing. For some individuals, well-adjusted teenagers, or those who just happen to kind of fall into a not unhealthy routine, it's okay. But do we just take it for granted? This is one of those things where we never had these questions before. We never had to consider this before. We didn't even know that this could have been a thing. Yeah, addiction to the TV, yeah, but at some point you had to peel yourself away from it to get other things done. And back in the day, there was only so much good stuff on TV to watch. But ironically, just a couple days ago, a family member told me, what's that, a book? You're reading a book? How cute. I mean, I understood where she was coming from. Who reads paper books these days? But that's also something that I like to do. I just, ironically, as society changes and trends change, books become harder and harder to find, books that I want to read. So, I'm stuck to the screen. This goes hand in hand with what I am concerned with in the Ministry of Education. And the syllabus, or the lack of a stable syllabus, the lack of maybe a proper plan for children's education. And then what goes hand in hand, because that's the academic part of it, right? What goes hand in hand then is the plan for development. Because while I appreciate the fact that, yes, it might make things easier for you to just give the children the screen, the device, the mobile phone, the tablet, and it settles them down, and they're not going to run around like a crazy child, out in public or even at home. They're not going to cause a ruckus. I get it. I understand that. I understand the value of that. And there are a lot of benefits, again, to consuming media, even to playing games. It helps with judgment, motor skills, etc., etc. But at the same time, there's no such thing as a free lunch. It can't be this automatic silver bullet that's just going to solve all our problems. Hey, give the child this and it's great. No, there are going to be consequences we don't understand, especially since not everybody is the same. So the inputs, the lessons, the methods are not going to work on the same for all children. And that's kids. What about young adults who kind of grew up with this, but they're in that transitory phase where we don't necessarily understand all the implications? They don't either. And it's, it's just the new thing that they always did once it came out, and it's nothing, it is perceived to be harmless. There's a lot to ask. Ironically, one might say that I'm straddling the fence here. I'm not actually committing. Because that's the point. We don't know. If we get situations like what we saw in India, in those examples, where we had a young adult saying, he lost his focus and it was affecting his social life, then we know in that case it goes too far. But not everybody is the same. We can't say that that's the actual outcome and the eventuality for everybody. So what do we do? What do we do? How do we treat this? Because, again, you can't just assume, give them the device and they're fine. No, at some point they need a parent. You can't replace a parent, a teacher, a mentor, a guardian, a family member with a device. A device cannot love you, cannot look out for you, can't protect you, and it can't guide you. It's just a tool. And I guess that's what we need to look out for. The young man had his social life affected. To what extent is our parental life and our childhoods in our society being affected? Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines as we usually do. Hear from you, the viewer, on this and everything we've spoken about, as well as a whole host of things that I haven't been able to get through this morning. Stay tuned here on WSN, your content capital. We'll be right back after this.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The best way tickets are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
As Kevin Hart would say, damn! Why we have so much minors out on the streets? There's an after-school program happening there. Side women don't give up, you know, you can become queen one day. Those companies who are currently looking for their money that they deposited in the Silicon Valley Bank, it's not there. ChatGPT is basically the start of Terminator. Our relationship with the colonial powers is like a relationship with a little bit of abuse that people like to stay in. And we remember how that was. Put in $100 and later tonight, you'll get back $3,000. I promise you. I promise you not. Did you rent an accent while you were across there?
When you're in the proximity of Donald Trump, somehow you adopt his aura.
First of all, I thought the $200 would be more than enough. It's $200.
I a goat farmer. I had 3 goats. Yeah, 3 goats and 1 cow. You know the name?
No, I don't.
Right, Messi, LeBron, and Cristiano Ronaldo. And the cow named Haaland.
I love Trinidad and Tobago, you know.
On the next episode of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day.
They have this burning desire to ask the question and they're just not asking it.
My youngest daughter had an incident, not really an incident, but a concern at school one time where she said, "Mommy, I don't want you to pick me up anymore." And I said, "Why?" She's like, "Because the kids keep asking me, what happened to your mommy's skin? And every day I go to school, they're like, what happened to your mommy's skin?" And I went to the car and I cried.
What studies have shown is that in general, stress, and that is metabolic as well as physiological stress on the body, can lead to the onset and worsening of autoimmune disorders.
I know how cruel the world could be when they see me. Would I be deemed worthy? Would they allow me into the spaces that I wanted to be?
It's harder when no one is clapping, but clap a little louder for yourself during those times. Anything is possible if you have the mindset and the desire to do it.
An encore of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. I once again, I have not addressed the fact that my co-host was not able to join me. He was, I believe, on AM Prime this morning. You would have seen him this morning. And there was all intentions to join, but for some technical reasons, he wasn't able to join this morning. But hopefully, we'll have him tomorrow with us so that we could engage in the debate on screen. Me just talking by myself here, we only got one side. You know, there are things I could miss. And to ensure, to keep me into account, right, to keep me in check, to hold me into account, now is the time that we open up the phone lines to hear from you, the viewers. The phone numbers should be on your screen. And call in. Let me know, what do you think? Do you have an issue with family members in your household, or maybe friends, neighbors in your community? They're too addicted to screens. What do you think about the situation with the procurement matter over CARICOM? And in general, because this is an ongoing issue on Talking Point, as well as what do you think about the recent, and obviously it's not going to end there, spate of murders where now innocent people are just being called collateral damage? Call in, let me know. Phone numbers should be up there. 2 phone numbers working, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But as I mentioned, I was speaking about the procurement situation that was centered around the CARICOM 50th anniversary, the summit held here in TNT. A lot of foreign dignitaries came in, didn't confirm until less than 2 months to go. And as outlined by the minister, it takes, at best, perfect scenario, at least 2 months, usually more, for the process to go through. So they had an exemption, and the opposition has made a case. They disagreed with it, and it's not necessarily clear. You know, the opposition might be right, or at least their concerns might be reasonable. So we'll have more on that tomorrow. But I'll say this, I'm willing to accept in general the explanation, at least so far. Right? I'm not necessarily going to say that anything illegal happened. And, you know, one can make the argument that unless there's further information, because right now the bill is apparently been reported to be 9 million. So, you know, 9 million to host important foreign dignitaries, many important foreign dignitaries, that seems okay. But while I think that the situation looks okay, what does not help is when a media house tried to contact the office of the procurement regulator, the executive assistant basically said, the procurement regulator instructed me to direct you to the Ministry of Finance as the legal notice originated there. Of all the things to say, I would argue that might have actually been the worst thing to say. Because even though you're not involved in the decision or whatever, you're still the office of the procurement regulator. You know, you still need to speak to the public and explain, at least from the position of your office, what's going on? Why is this allowed? Why are you not saying anything or making accusations or complaints? Do you accept this? So it heavily implies that the procurement regulator, I mean, she was only appointed on June 28th. So to be fair, it's not a lot of time to get acclimated. Maybe she doesn't exactly know all the technicalities of her position and what happened. right? Because when she was appointed is kind of around the time all of this stuff was happening. But on some level, to just say that, to just say, you know, to not, if you don't know, if you're trying to get up to speed, I would hope that you could contact the Ministry of Finance, work things out, you know, get a proper explanation so at least you don't present this to the public, which makes it look as though you're deferring. And it actually is counter to the minister's own message that this is a government decision. This is not a unilateral decision on my part. It makes it look like you're deferring to him. Or, at the very least, you're deferring to the government. Which means that I am here to sit in the chair and do as I'm told, and not really here to make decisions. That's what it feels like, things like that. Because something controversial potentially happened, and instead of explaining your side of it or your part of it, because you're the office of the procurement regulator, you kind of, well, they did it, so talk to them. Don't talk to me, because I have nothing to do with this. That's the implied meaning in the statement, and that's not good, because it's a passive response. It is, I want to avoid this situation, which goes back to what I just said. So we have a caller. Sorry, callers. I was getting lost in my thoughts there. We have a caller from San Fernando. Good morning.
Morning, Sean.
Morning.
This issue with with the same procurement issue that you're speaking about, you know, I am so disappointed in the way the population has allowed themselves to be hoodwinked by comments of the opposition. And let me tell you why. And as well, that issue that you just raised there about the journalist calling the officer of the procurement regulator and asking for an explanation and being directed to the legal notice. The issue is this, Sean. People in Trinidad and Tobago, the government passed legislation, and people don't read. They don't go and look at it. So even my thing as a journalist, any journalist, if the opposition comes and make this comment, the first thing you're supposed to do is look at the procurement legislation and see if there's a breach based on what they are saying and what the issue is. And that is the problem. They allow people, the population are easily hoodwinked because they do not read, they do not, back to that same thing you're talking about internet and being able to, and devices. If they would take the device and just go on the device, it's easy now. Not like long ago where you have to go and get a copy and that type of thing at the government printry. You can pull it up and read it. And that is my issue, that we journalists in this country have become lazy. Sorry to say that, but they have become lazy. So a story pops up and they run with it rather than go and do some research and see, okay. And they can make a comment and say, the legislation says X. This is just a storm in a teacup, you know. Or I shouldn't even say a storm. It's not even a storm. One other thing I want to ask, Sean, with respect to the Ministry of Planning. To get for the population to get an understanding of what the Ministry of Planning actually does and what it should do, I would ask. I don't know if you would allow, and if you would give the professor about 5 minutes and ask him for his goodly time if he could explain from his point of view what the Ministry of Planning does, and it would be so instructive for the population and would answer a lot of questions. Thank you, Sean. Have a good day.
Thank you, caller. That's a good suggestion, because I myself, you know, I think Keaton and I have asked. I won't speak for him. I'll speak for myself. I myself am clueless with regards to what is the point of the Ministry of Planning, because it's not as though other ministries don't make plans for their, you know, the various items under their remit. So I would like to hear from the professor if he could give an explanation as well on that, because I really would like to know. we just have this ministry that's kind of just there to take up space. Anyway, we have a caller that's also been waiting from Digger Martin. Very sorry, caller, if you're still with us. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Sean.
Morning, long time.
Yes, morning, but you know my position, so.
Yes.
I just call it 2 bits, What I found strange with this procurement thing is, if what is said is being true, that they need to get permission from the Parliament. If that is so, I think then they should have done that. But if that is up for debate, we don't know. I'm just going by what I heard on the news and so on.
Yes.
And also, what I find is the deafening silence of the Prime Minister and the Mr. Fitzgerald Hines and all these spate of murders and the way the country is going, not hearing them at all. They just say nothing. They cannot come out and at least trying to appease the public, let them feel a little bit, more safe and so on. But you're not hearing at all from them. They're just ignoring everything. And that is not right. I mean, with the Commissioner of Police, she probably made a little faux pas there was coming to say that, everything will come down in June month. But I think she was under pressure and she made that statement out of desperation. But I'm glad to see you all and see everything is well with you all and hope my friend Keaton is all well. I saw him on AM Prime this morning, so I realize he's all right. So you all take good care of yourselves and be good. Have a good day.
Thank you, caller. Now, one thing though, if you could hear me, the previous caller did say that if you read the legislation, the accusations by the opposition don't seem to really have much weight behind them, or doesn't really carry water. So it's one of those things where, and for me, I didn't necessarily read through all the legislation either. When claims are made, I kind of, how do I put this? Claims can be made, and sometimes it's hard to read through the technobabble. You look to the legal experts to comment on it. Sometimes they have differing opinions. In this case, it seems clear-cut enough, and I didn't necessarily want to take what the opposition said and run with it. That's my safety net. Right? If I don't know something, I don't understand something, or I haven't had the chance yet to research it, I don't just take what a politician says and run with it. I try not to. And I'm always curious what the other side had to say as a backstop. But generally speaking, claims can be made. And yes, the media does just run with the claims politician makes, and they don't add extra context. But to be fair though, I don't think it's necessarily lazy. I think it's the fact that the industry is under a hard time, and it's putting a lot of these journalists under pressure, and they have to do more with less. But to be fair to the caller from San Fernando, that the actual output, the quality of it, it's not necessarily something that we should accept. So it's a difficult conundrum, but something that has to be addressed at some point. We have a call on the line from Shagonas. Good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning, Professor. A request.
This morning, so I didn't intend to call. But somebody talked about the Ministry of Planning.
Yes.
Originally, the Ministry of Planning dealt with physical planning. The rules and regulations of development and constructions and things like that.
Okay.
There was a change in government, I can't believe maybe now or one of them. Who decided to put fiscal planning together with physical planning and the financial planning? I personally believe that was a bad idea, because in doing that they got rid of something they call the Organization and Management Division, who was specialists in looking at the organization of the public service and making sure they have proper staffing and things like that. Since then, successive governments have made changes, and I think they should separate physical planning from fiscal planning. fiscal planning should stay with the Ministry of Finance. Any
Yes.
questions?
No. I want to thank you for that. Although, as much as that is what the Ministry of Planning is on paper now, I don't even know if that's executed.
No ministry does the work.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for that lesson.
No problem.
Have a good day. Be well, huh? Keep well. So, caller from San Fernando, there is the basic answer. I think, to be fair to Professor, Lord only knows what the minor details and extra duties that might have been added by the way over the course of the years. I don't know if anybody would be able to keep up with everything for every ministry. And as he said, what ministry does work? Do we actually get anything out of the Ministry of Planning? I don't know. Thankfully, I agree with the Professor. Financial planning should be with the Ministry of Finance, and it seems as though that it is. The money is being controlled by the Minister of Finance, for better or worse. In some cases, it's not all bad. So in some cases for better, and potentially in some cases for worse. History will have to be the judge when history gets access to all the information. Everything is not public record yet. But something that one of the callers, the caller from Digger Martin, spoke about as well, with regards to the Minister of National Security and the Prime Minister being quite silent. I'll also throw in the Commissioner of Police. Now, I get it. She's not a public speaker. But you can't just decide what aspects of the job you're going to discard when it's a public job with a lot of responsibilities to the public. To some extent, we're the stakeholders. You need to be able to communicate effectively with us. And some people might say it's unfair because you're going to go in front of the public to just say what? Doom and gloom or what? Or you're going to try to mama us? Well, I'll say this. Talking Point has always questioned the actual practical effectiveness of Gary Griffith, but not his leadership style and messaging. And he was able to go and figure out a way to inspire confidence in the population and to sweet face. So just keep that in mind. That is the one, and we have said that before in the past, that is the one benefit at the very least that we objectively could state with surety that he had on the police service. We have a caller from St. James. Good morning. Morning,
hello,
caller.
good morning.
You there? Morning, caller.
Morning, Sean. How are you doing? I hope all is well. I hope Keaton is well.
Keaton as well. Keaton as well.
I was liming by a friend recently, and he had a friend visit him, and the friend is a fisherman. And the friend come to lime with him, and he brings some alcohol for him to have a drink with him from Venezuela. That he just come back from Venezuela. He's a fisherman, and he bring this alcohol. He bring up some alcohol, and so on. So I very concerned about that. And there's a little boat bring a couple bottles of alcohol, probably God knows what else. So what about the big boats and the big yachts and them? And what I understand is that you could just get on your yacht or your big boat with your passport and just ride out of Trinidad and hit America. Yeah. And, well, apart from the whatever they do in America, I mean, a lot of people know the pros and cons. Once you get out of America with whatever you're bringing, coming into Trinidad, you just come and you park up. And you offload on your little dinghy or whatever they call it or whatever, or you get a bigger boat depending on what you bring. And I am amazed that in this modern time something like this is happening in Trinidad and Tobago. Utilize the Coast Guard, right? You need to have posts all through the yachting industry and a sort of customs-like sort of atmosphere, right? And this thing, I mean, I can't believe this, boy. I can't believe this. The other thing, the internet, as you were saying, is a great thing. It helped me a lot. I must get on the internet every morning, browse through Facebook, And mainly I used to go to talk to friends abroad and so on. That I'm so happy to think, WhatsApp too bothered so much. And I hate the phone. I have a friend, when he called me, I started to run and grab the earphone one time and plug it in because I hate for my ears to get warm. From the time I have my phone and my ears start to get warm, I start to get irritated. So the internet is a great thing. All devices have locks. Parents need to get to understand that they could lock off certain programs on your devices and have your children have access to only particular things that you want them to be a part of. But I also want to say, is the YouTube especially has helped me a lot with cooking and fixing all my appliances in my house, right? That people used to rub me blind. The washing machine, the fridge, the stove, all these things are fixing everything, are doing it yourself, do it yourself thing. Now, anything you want to know, there is information to you, apart from the rubbish they have on the internet. You keep up the good work, have a nice day.
Thank you, caller. That is an excellent point. I'm embarrassed that I actually forgot that, because it's like you, especially like with regards to cooking. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't know half of what I do know for what little cooking skill I have if it wasn't for the internet to kind of give me that shortcut, to tell me things that I could then try, as opposed to just randomly doing nonsense and hoping that it's edible in the end. So that's a good point. And also staying connected to friends and family abroad. For a society like ours that has a big diaspora, the value of that, again, the value of for a little island like ours to be connected to the rest of the world, so that we don't have to take an expensive flight to see things and be exposed to things, can't be understated or underestimated. But with regards to your first point, it is an interesting thing with regards to personal boats and yachts and sailboats and all of that. Technically speaking, you're supposed to report in, you're supposed to have documentation. The Coast Guard can inspect you, but around the world, they're not going to inspect every yacht. At least I don't think so. Regulations vary, of course. They might, however, keep track if they notice anomalies, and they can inspect you. I'm pretty sure just about everywhere around the world has the right to board your boat once you are coming from international waters, or even once you're in their waters. If they have any sort of suspicions at all, they could board you and inspect you, right? And of course, a lot of it depends on where you're coming from, how, the direction that you're sailing in, what you're carrying, etc., the make of your boat, how much capacity it has. There's a lot of variables that will go into whether or not, you might be acting suspiciously on the water, and they might want to interdict you and search your boat. The problem with TNT is not just that there are potential ways you could kind of get around maritime law and regulations and stuff like that. The problem is, I don't think we have an active Coast Guard. And I don't think we have enough Coast Guard vessels to patrol all of the potential points of entry. Just legal, right? Much less the illegal ones. Because depending, at some point the boats will kind of mix in, on the way from Venezuela to Trinidad. And of course we have fishermen as well who don't do like what you said. They just go out to fish and come back in, and they have also been mixed in the waters. And they also have issues with pirates from Venezuela, which is a long-standing issue. So all of these things, one would think we have a need for an active Coast Guard. But it seems as though we can't facilitate enough patrols. And then on top of that, there is what I heard once, where a Coast Guard patrol might be scheduled, and then somebody makes a call and tells the patrol, hey, don't patrol tonight. Something like that I have heard. It is alleged that there's corruption in our various services in the Ministry of National Security, and if it is true, to whatever degree it might be true, one of the obvious concerns with the Coast Guard is the fact that even what few patrols we do send out purposefully don't find anything. But they did find the head of police legal under Gary Griffith, to make an example out of him. The only interdiction that the Coast Guard had, that of my memory, during COVID-19 lockdowns. They could do that. Funny that. But all of the smuggling somehow still gets through. Something to think about. When I ask, why do we even have various services in the Defense Force when it is questionable outside of like the support and engineering battalion and things like that, search and rescue apparatus with regards to the Air Guard, Coast Guard, Defense Force, outside of those things and the construction engineering, why do we have all of this Defense Force for? We don't utilize, we don't get any productivity out of a significant chunk of it. But it seems as though they don't need to worry about their job security. Funny that a public servant not necessarily concerned about their job security. That's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But today, you can make it a good day, as my co-host always says, if you try. So do try, because our sweet land of TNT, we have so much going for us. It's a shame if we allow it to slip through our fingers. So make the best of what we have, because we have a lot. Folks, this has been Talking Point. I want to thank all of our callers. Nice engaging conversations this morning. Continue to enjoy your vacation, all of you kids off from school. And we will see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
I'm Keaton Shaw, and we are WESN, the content capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, heart disease claims a life every 34 seconds.
Our relative sitting down across the table is experiencing a heart attack as we speak.
It is important to seek medical attention urgently, because prompt treatment of a heart attack could prevent extensive damage and death. Therefore, one should try to get to a hospital as soon as possible, preferably by ambulance.
What's Up Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the